I have been in politics long enough to recognize the difference between pressure and panic. I have seen politicians face hostile hearings, aggressive prosecutors, relentless media scrutiny, and investigations that lasted years. I have watched men and women weather storms that would have crushed ordinary people. What I am witnessing right now with Donald Trump is not that. This is not pressure. This is not frustration. This is not righteous anger. This is a full-scale psychological meltdown by a man who understands, on a visceral level, that the walls are closing in and that there may finally be no exit left. What just happened is historic, and it cannot be dismissed as routine political drama. Congress has issued a demand that Donald Trump cannot tweet away, cannot threaten away, cannot delay indefinitely, and cannot intimidate out of existence. It is a demand rooted in constitutional authority, supported by credible evidence, and structured in a way that makes avoidance nearly impossible. His reaction to it tells us everything we need to know. The rage, the panic, the incoherent attacks, the threats, the desperation, these are not the actions of a man confident in his innocence. These are the actions of someone who knows that compliance means exposure, and exposure means accountability. I want to be very clear about this. Congressional oversight is not optional. It is not a courtesy. It is not a favor that powerful people grant when it suits them. It is one of the core mechanisms by which our constitutional system enforces accountability. The founders did not design Congress to be a spectator. They gave it subpoena power, investigatory authority, and the responsibility to act when credible evidence of wrongdoing exists. That authority does not disappear because someone is famous, wealthy, or a former president. It certainly does not disappear because someone is running for office while already convicted of multiple felonies. I have dealt with Congress from every possible position. I have dealt with congressional oversight as a governor, as president, and as a private citizen. I understand how these processes work. I understand the legal thresholds that must be met before Congress issues demands of this scope and specificity. And I can tell you without hesitation that what Congress is demanding from Donald Trump right now falls squarely within its constitutional authority. It is lawful, it is justified, and it is long overdue. So what exactly is this bombshell demand that has Trump spiraling out of control? Congress is requiring Trump to produce a massive tranche of documents and communications related specifically to his conduct after his criminal convictions and during his ongoing legal battles. This is not ancient history. This is not about decades-old business practices. This is about what he has been doing as a convicted felon while actively campaigning for the presidency of the United States. The demand includes detailed financial records showing how Trump has been funding his legal defense. It includes communications between Trump, his lawyers, political operatives, and outside entities during the period following his convictions. It includes documents related to statements he has made about the justice system, prosecutors, judges, and witnesses. It includes evidence of potential witness intimidation, obstruction, and retaliatory conduct that may have occurred after juries had already found him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. This is not a fishing expedition. That phrase gets thrown around to dismiss legitimate oversight, but it does not apply here. Fishing expeditions are broad, vague, and speculative. This demand is narrow, targeted, and precise. It names dates. It names individuals. It names categories of documents that investigators already have reason to believe exist. That level of specificity tells you something important. Congress is not guessing. Congress already knows enough to know exactly what it is looking for. Trump's response has been nothing short of unhinged. He has been rage, posting on Truth Social at all hours of the day and night. He has been hurling personal insults at members of Congress. He has been threatening lawsuits, investigations, retaliation, and political retribution. He has threatened everything except the one thing that would actually resolve the issue, which is complying with the lawful demand. That omission is not accidental, it is the point. When an innocent person is confronted with an investigation, their instinct is to deny the allegations and provide evidence to clear their name. When a guilty person is confronted with an investigation, their instinct is to attack the investigators, delay the process, and intimidate anyone involved. Trump has chosen the second path, and he has chosen it instinctively and repeatedly because it is the only playbook he has ever known. I want you to think about the contrast here. When I was president and Congress demanded information from my administration, there were times I strongly disagreed with those demands. There were times I believed they were politically motivated. There were times I thought Congress was overreaching, but I never claimed Congress had no authority to investigate. I never refused outright to cooperate. I never launched personal attacks and threats against members of Congress for doing their jobs. I understood something fundamental that Trump has never understood or accepted. In a constitutional democracy, no one is above oversight. Trump believes he is. He believes that loyalty from a segment of the electorate places him beyond accountability. He believes that if he shouts "witch hunt" loudly enough and often enough, the law will retreat. He believes that intimidation is a substitute for compliance. And now he is discovering in real time that those tactics no longer work when the evidence is overwhelming and the stakes are this high. The timing of this congressional demand is critical. It comes after Trump has been convicted on 34 felony counts in New York. It comes as he faces sentencing. It comes while he is under indictment in other jurisdictions. It comes after years of accumulating evidence that his criminal conduct did not stop when the verdicts were read. Congress is not acting on speculation. It is acting on patterns of behavior that strongly suggest ongoing misconduct by a convicted felon who is actively seeking the highest office in the land. The demand itself is extraordinarily detailed. Congress is asking for communications between Trump and specific individuals involved in his legal defense and political operation. They are asking for financial records that could reveal conflicts of interest, corrupt arrangements, or foreign influence. They are asking for documentation related to public and private statements that may constitute intimidation of witnesses or attempts to undermine the justice system, and they have issued a firm deadline. Not a suggestion, not a polite request, a deadline. What is driving Trump absolutely insane is not just the demand itself, but the consequences that come with refusing to comply. Congress has made it clear that noncompliance will not be ignored. We are talking about contempt of Congress charges. We are talking about referrals to the Department of Justice. We are talking about potential new criminal exposure for obstruction of justice. This is not political theater. This is the enforcement mechanism of constitutional oversight being applied to someone who has spent his entire life evading consequences. Trump's legal team is scrambling, and I do not use that word lightly. They are facing an impossible dilemma. If they advise him to comply fully, the documents may expose additional criminal conduct. If they advise him to refuse, he faces contempt and obstruction charges. If they attempt partial compliance, they risk accusations of bad faith and further legal exposure. There is no good option because the underlying problem is not the demand. The underlying problem is what the demand is likely to reveal. Let me tell you what I believe is in those documents, based on experience, patterns of behavior, and what has already come to light. I believe there are communications that show coordination with foreign entities at a time when Trump was under indictment. I believe there are financial records that reveal questionable sources of funding for his legal defense. I believe there are messages that demonstrate attempts to intimidate witnesses, discredit jurors, or influence ongoing proceedings. I believe there is evidence of continued obstruction of justice even after conviction, and Trump believes that too. That is why he is panicking. The psychological dimension of this cannot be ignored. Watch his recent rallies, read his posts, listen to his tone. The bravado is still there on the surface, but underneath it is raw fear. This is a man who knows he is cornered. He knows the system he has mocked and abused for decades is finally closing in. And he is lashing out like someone who understands, perhaps for the first time, that he may not be able to escape. The demand from Congress also includes testimony. They want Trump himself to appear before congressional committees and answer questions under oath about his conduct since his conviction. That prospect terrifies him more than any document request ever could. Donald Trump under oath is Donald Trump exposed. He cannot help himself. He lies reflexively, and lying under oath is perjury. His lawyers know this. That is why they will do everything in their power to prevent him from testifying. But Congress has the authority to compel testimony, and refusal carries consequences. If Trump refuses to testify, he faces contempt. If he testifies and lies, he faces perjury. If he testifies and tells the truth, he exposes himself to additional criminal liability. There is no scenario in which this ends well for him, and he knows it. There is also the issue of evidence destruction. Trump has a documented history of attempting to hide, destroy, or manipulate evidence. If he attempts to do that now, in response to a congressional demand, he opens himself up to additional charges that could carry serious prison time. In the digital age, destruction is rarely complete. Records leave trails, deletions are logged, communications are backed up. Attempts to cover up often become more damaging than the original misconduct. Politically, this is devastating. Trump is running for president as a convicted felon who is actively resisting lawful oversight. Voters are watching him threaten members of Congress, attack institutions, and behave like someone with far more to hide than what has already been proven in court. His base may remain loyal, but elections are not won by bases alone. Independents and moderate voters are watching this and drawing conclusions. The Republican Party is watching too, and their silence is deafening. They know what is happening. They know the demand is legitimate. They know Trump's behavior is indefensible, and yet most of them remain paralyzed by fear of his base. History will not be kind to that cowardice. This congressional demand is not just about Donald Trump. It is about whether the rule of law still applies to powerful people. It is about whether a convicted felon can run for president while actively obstructing oversight with impunity. It is about whether constitutional authority means anything when tested against demagoguery and intimidation. Trump can rage, he can threaten, he can delay, but he cannot escape this forever. Congress has drawn a line, the courts will be involved, the evidence will come out, and when it does, it will confirm what his behavior already tells us. This is not the reaction of an innocent man. This is the reaction of someone who knows that the truth is finally catching up with him.